Hey everyone, this is May, and welcome to another episode of The May Lee Show. I hope everyone is doing okay out there. I feel like I'm starting every episode like this by saying, it's crazy what's been happening, and it seems like every day something new is happening and something is changing, um, right now it's about the George Floyd aftermath and the talk about systemic racism. And this is something that has to be broken wide open, and that's exactly what's happening, and it's needed, and it is something that needs to be discussed. And listen, I know a lot of people have been saying, why is it just Black Lives Matter? It should be all lives matter. Well, the reason why it's Black Lives Matter right now is because we saw the horrific death of an African American man shot on video, um, losing his life, being murdered and killed. And so this has once again shed light on a systemic problem that we have in this country. And racism is not just about one race, it's about all races that are suffering from racism. Listen, the Asian American community, and I've been saying this since freaking February, you guys. So for those of you out there in social media land who are accusing this show and me of not addressing this problem of xenophobia against Asians, you freaking have not been paying attention. So go back and watch some of my shows before you accuse me of that, because this is something that we have been addressing since day one. But my point being is that racism is ugly in every form, and it affects every race that has been made to feel less than the other, outsider, subhuman. And this is a problem that we are now finally waking up to on such a grand scale. That's what we needed to do. That we needed this. We needed this massive shakeup. But I was listening to a sermon by a pastor over the weekend, and you guys know I've said I'm Christian. I'm very progressive though. But he was talking about the illness of the yes, but what about, and meaning that he's hearing people try to compare and say, well, what about my suffering? And so it's the phrase you hear, yes, but what about us? Or what about this group? Or what about my pain? Or what about my suffering? And he suggested, that's really not the way to go. The way to go is you need to stop and you need to listen. And you need to sympathize with somebody else's pain. That's what this moment is hopefully reminding us to do. Instead of separating, you have to just stop and say, you know what? I want to understand your pain. And so that is what I really hope that more and more people start embracing, rather than trying to separate and compare. Who suffered the most, or why isn't my community being looked upon and helped versus that community? And to the Asian American community, I would like to say this. We are speaking up and speaking out about the xenophobia that has arisen from COVID-19, but we need to speak up more, okay? I know there's a lot of fear. That's why people are responding this way. There's so much fear and anxiety. But fear should also motivate us to want change. That's why people are marching on the streets for Black Lives Matter, because they really have taken this upon themselves to speak out, because they've had enough. They've had 401 years of this, right? They've had enough. And they've galvanized, the rest of the world to back up the fact that there's been so much injustice. Well, Asians also need to speak up about what's happened to us and continues to happen to us. We are, but I want to hear more of it. And I want our community to be willing to be more courageous and march if we need to, or organize a lot more. Listen, something just happened recently where there was a post by a woman whose grandfather allegedly was beaten up on a bus and told that he's, the problem, the virus is his problem and the cause of it. And she posted it, but then because outlets picked it up, including Neckshark, she said, please take down my post. This is making my grandfather uncomfortable and I don't want you to use this, even though she had posted it and it went viral. So you have to commit to change. You have to be willing to have the conviction to stand by what you're trying to say and what changes you want to see. You can't just put it out and then retract, because that just shows then that we don't have the commitment, that we're wishy-washy, and we're living up to that whole idea of Asians. Oh, yeah, forget, see, that they're too weak. No, that's exactly the opposite image we want to be projecting, because if we want change, we have to be willing to go forward, push through that fear. So, we have to work together on all of this, and all communities have to work together. That's why marching for Black Lives Matter, protesting for Black Lives Matter will impact all of us, because racism affects all of us, right? So please try to reframe it, if for those of you who don't understand still, that this is a movement for all of us, not just one group. Okay, I saw a sign that I had posted online because I thought it was just so brilliantly done. It was a beautiful young Black girl holding this sign. It said, "We said Black Lives Matter. We know all lives matter. We never said only Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter now because we're in danger." I may have gotten that a little bit mixed up, but that was the premise of it. And so, yeah, right now, that's the fight. But just remember, the fight affects us all. The fight is about racism in this country, around the world. And I think that's why the world is responding in this way. The world is responding because they're responding to the ugliness of racism overall. All right. So my guest today, I'm so excited. He is Daniel Wu. He's a Chinese-American actor and director and producer. He started his career in Hong Kong, where he made like over 60 movies. Some of them, a lot of them with martial arts, which he is phenomenal at. And then he did the AMC series Into the Badlands. He was the executive producer and also the star. Broke down a lot of barriers because he played a good guy, leading man, Asian male, and really tough, strong, really good looking. Yeah, that goes without saying. So he has made a lot of inroads for better representation. So I'm so excited to speak to him because there was something that brought us together online, and it had to do with Bruce Lee. So I'm excited to talk about that, but also just all sorts of things. So he's joining us from his home right now. Hey, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
I am so excited to have you on the show because I am a big fan of yours, and I'm not just saying that. I actually am a really big fan of yours. And I reached out to you on Instagram because I had seen this beautiful article that you had penned about the Bruce Lee documentary and how much influence he had. And I just had to say that was really insightful. Thank you so much for writing that. And you wrote me back, which was really nice.
Yes, yeah, right. Yeah. No, I've been following you, so when I saw the comment, I was like, oh, cool. She saw it and read it. It's relevant to like the stuff that you've been talking about on your show.
Well,
so that was great.
That's why, honestly, Daniel, immediately after that, I thought, you know what? I think I want Daniel on the show right now because of what's going on in our world, in our country, and because of the issues that had sprouted because of COVID-19 and the
Yeah.
xenophobia
Yeah.
against Asians. It seems like we're at this unbelievable tipping point on race relations, but also the idea of decency and the loss of decency in our society. I mean, that
Exactly.
I've been saying that, right? So
Yeah.
tell me first how you've been doing since quarantine started and, all of this uncertainty. How have you been holding up?
It kind of goes in waves. I think in the beginning it was interesting because it was like, what's going on? Like, okay, let's go buy stuff. Let's batten down.
Yeah.
And then 2 3 weeks into it, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I didn't need to freak out, right? And then you start to go, okay, I'm getting a little pent up in here.
Yep.
I'm dealing with like distance learning with my daughter, which is like super challenging because she's only 7, right? So you have to actually sit with her for like 3 4 hours a day doing that. So that was stressful and challenging, right? Then all the anti-Asian hate crimes started happening, and that was really stressful.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you about the genesis of that article, why I got into it, and then kind of getting through that, writing the article, making me feel better. Then the George Floyd situation happened. That was crazy.
Right.
So it's been up and down. It's a lot of.
It's been
intense,
nonstop.
I would say.
I mean, Daniel, think about it. It's been nonstop, one thing after another. Just when you think it couldn't get worse or nothing more terrible could happen, something else has been happening. And
Totally. I feel like 2020, this whole year has been like this. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a basketball fan, so Kobe Bryant's death was like just tragic, right?
That's how it started.
That it was crazy. There's a lot of crazy things that happened in such a short amount of time in this year. Just like, and like I'm Chinese, so I read like Chinese horoscope every year. I'm not really superstitious, but I read it. And I'm looking for things like that, and it didn't say anything like all this kind of craziness.
Oh,
would happen.
You know what, Daniel? I read the Chinese horoscope. I'm Korean, but Koreans also follow it too.
Right.
And I'm not that superstitious either. I do it for fun.
Yeah.
So obviously, I read my horoscope, and I'm a horse sign.
Okay.
And my 2020, this was supposed to be a terrible year for me. So I was actually, prepared saying, okay, it's not going to be the best year. I didn't know it was going to be a bad year for everyone,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
So what's interesting though, I've been talking about this with friends and I'm curious to see what you think. We're all saying, oh, 2020 is horrible. Let's just cancel 2020 because of everything that's been happening. But lately now people are thinking maybe we all needed this year.
No, I agree. I don't think you can cancel out a year. I think that we learned a lot.
Yeah.
We learned a lot that we wouldn't have taken time to pause and really think about if it hadn't been sheltering in place. Yep. Maybe the George Floyd situation would have been glossed over again, like all the other ones that happened before this.
Right.
And I think it's a combination of being pent up and having time to meditate and think about things and being more mindful, but also being pent up and upset and angry and wanting to vent that frustration somehow, lash out somehow.
Right.
And so I think it's been the perfect storm that created this year. And I don't think we should cancel it. I think, it sucks. But I think we've learned a lot and we've grown from it,
And honestly, the whole idea of 2020 vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it that way now. It's like the year of 2020 is where we're supposed to get clarity and vision on things that maybe we didn't focus on before and we glossed over or we would dismiss. So maybe that's very symbolic in some way too. Right.
Yeah, that's true. And I remember reading my horoscope and saying, this year's going to be like last year. It's going to be a grind. Yeah. But I didn't imagine the grind being like so, self-reflective. It's interesting.
Exactly. So anything that you have realized about yourself or something that maybe you have come to more enlightenment about during this time?
Well, what was interesting was the whole genesis of that letter was, I had been, once the anti-Asian hate crime started happening, and it started to upset me a lot, and I started, searching around on the internet, trying to join groups to see what I could do to do something about it. And I didn't find the right things. I saw Andrew Yang's thing op-ed, and I didn't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of other things, and I was like, okay, these are great, but it's like, okay, we're still just only talking to our community. What can we do to get this message out beyond our community? Because I don't like posting about how I just dislike it on my Instagram feed. I don't feel like it's just preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to do something impactful. And then just happenstance, while I was like, thinking about all this stuff, Mark Spears, my friend from the Undefeated, asked me, do you want to write an article about Bruce Lee and your relationship with him, and then to also try to tie it into the anti-Asian hate crime stuff.
So we should give everyone the background on this letter. It is based on the documentary that just came out on Bruce Lee called Be Water.
Yeah, it was meant to sort of promote that documentary.
Right. And so you were kind of using that as a reason to write this letter, but then it's also much deeper in terms of all the issues that are taking place. So I just wanted to give people that background.
Sure. Yeah. And it's published on the undefeated.com,
right.
Which is sports, race, and culture website under ESPN. But while writing it, and funny, it was while I was writing it, I just completed it, and then the George Floyd situation happened.
Oh.
And so it was really more focused on the anti-Asian crime.
Right.
But then the George Floyd situation happened, and I'm like, I can't turn this in like this.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay.
Because it's gonna seem like I'm like trying to, well, what about us? Piggyback off of it, right?
Exactly.
And that topic is still really important to me, because I was really upset that like the people getting attacked were like, elderly, women, just weak, visually weaker people.
Right.
And people like me, I'm like 6'1", 185 pounds. I never experienced. I'm walking around outside, never experienced it, because people aren't going to mess with me. You know what I mean? So,
well, you're also Daniel Wu and Mr. Badlands, so I don't think people are going to mess with you.
Well, I'm sure some people don't know who I am, and they see my size and they're like, oh, okay, they're not going to mess with that guy.
Sure.
But they'll pick on an 80-year-old lady or a 60-year-old man or some young girls, because they think that they're easily pushed over. And that was really like infuriating. I was like so mad about that. Because they were choosing to pick on what they perceived to be weaker people,
sure,
and cowardly. I thought it was cowardly,
very cowardly.
And it was happening also. Like my dad lives in a retirement, not a center, but it's a housing estate. It's like a golf course with housing around it. And it's all you have to be 55 or over to buy.
My mom does too. I wonder if they live in the same place. My mom does too.
In the Bay Area.
Oh, no. She lives down in the OC. Yeah, but same concept.
So it's one of those places. And then I read on their newsletter that they experienced, someone there, a Chinese couple experienced that. They're just going for a walk, and some old guy was sitting on a bench and just told them to go back to China and blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to do something. And this letter came around at the right time. But then, again, as I was saying, the George Floyd situation happened. So I had to readjust it to be more about racism in general. Yeah. So it didn't seem like I was just like trying to piggyback off the Floyd.
No. And it all works so beautifully together in terms of addressing the pervasive problem of racism that affects all people of color, not just people of color, but also sexual orientation, anyone who feels like
humans, we're all humans,
Yeah, but people who have been marginalized, right? I mean, we all have felt this way to some extent, some, obviously to a lesser extent, some, much more for centuries, obviously with the African-American community. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And why it was actually confusing or difficult for me, because it was like a time I was confused because I lived in Hong Kong for 20 years. Yeah. Right. And I arrived there and I was no longer a minority.
Yes.
And it was an interesting feeling for 20 years to not have to think about race at all, really at all. Right. Even in my job, when I'm, casting for a role, I know I'm being chosen because of my ability.
Not because of your
my, my status or whatever, and not because we need to find a Chinese guy for this role, or we're casting an Asian guy for this role. Right. So I never experienced any of that. Not even like, my Asian American counterpart colleague actors also have gone through years and years of that. So that muscle in my head kind of like relaxed and got weak, So I wasn't really conditioned. I write about it in the paper and in the letter that I wasn't really conditioned to deal with issues of race. And even when I came back to do Into the Badlands, a lot of Asian American media, including Next Shark, and everybody wanted to like put me on this, like, you're the leader of this Asian American, you're an Asian American male leading a TV show. You're the only one, so you got to lead us. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't want that responsibility. Like,
so you felt tremendous pressure.
Well, I just had my head in that space. So I hadn't even thought about that.
You didn't even think
I didn't even think about how like that was.
Isn't that interesting?
Kind of groundbreaking to have an Asian American male lead a show that was, big budget and everything like that.
Because to you, it was natural after being in Hong Kong for 20 years. You're thinking, what's the big deal?
Movies for 20 years. I've led over 60 movies. So it didn't occur to me that this was anything different until I'd been here for a couple of years. And then the COVID-19 and the stuff that was happening, that exacerbated it even more. And so that really kind of changed me.
Right.
This really kind of changed me and go, oh, I need to get back into this. I can't ignore this. I need to get back into this. I need maybe not become an activist, but I need to be aware and understand what is going on.
So so before COVID for you then, you still felt like it wasn't something that you needed to address, or you still were not in that frame of mind thinking that we were being, we were still looked upon as different?
Yeah, I still knew that, I grew up here. So obviously, part of my career path is that I never thought I could be an actor because growing up here, you never saw, Asian American leads on screen. Or actually, the only one I ever saw was Long Duck Dong from 16 Candles.
Well, that's, right? Yeah, exactly. And that didn't do us a service.
Yeah, and that was that's it. So it never even crossed my mind. So when I went to Hong Kong on a holiday, I was asked to be in a commercial and then asked to be in movies. And it never crossed my mind. So it opened up a whole other world to me, right? And so I forgot what we were talking about. How do we get to this?
It was just because you said it was because of COVID and the xenophobia that it started reminding you that, wow, this is still an issue that I should care about.
Yeah, I'm obviously, no, I guess what I was getting at is that I'm aware of the issues that we have lack of representation and all that kind of stuff. But it was the COVID, it was the actual physical attacks that were starting to freak me out. It's one thing to not have representation.
Yeah.
And I'd seen in the past 2 or 3 years that Hollywood's starting to change, with Crazy Rich Asians and all that stuff. So I wasn't about to complain because things were getting better. Right.
They were.
But it was the violence that started to make me freak out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel, I've said this to other people since all this happened. It's amazing how before COVID, I mean, we were on a trajectory, right? Because of Crazy Rich Asians, and then all the Farewell,
yes.
And then of course Parasite swept the Oscars, so that just gave us even more sort of the world more awareness about Asian talent overall. And then 180, COVID hits, and it's bam, and it made my head spin, and so. My concern was, oh man, we made all this progress and we were making all this progress, and then all of a sudden this happens. And so should we be fearful that, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back? I mean, what are your thoughts? From your perspective, because you're in the business in Hollywood and, still trying to represent.
No, that's exactly what I felt like. I felt like, okay, we're making progress. It's slow. It is what it is, but we're moving forward, right? And it's been better than it has for the past, between Bruce Lee and now, right? Yeah. Or even you could say Joy Luck Club and now, that 25 years. It's there was nothing in between. And it's okay, so this is good. This is a good thing. And then all this stuff started happening, and the hatred was crazy. And I was like, wow,
I know.
These people has it been buried underneath them, or they've been holding it all this time? Or is it suddenly this, Trump's rhetoric and all that stuff triggered everybody? I wasn't sure what was going on. I didn't see it in that way. Right. And then it made me really deeply explore the issue a bit more and try and connect with people. So I talked to a lot of people, Jose Antonio Vargas, I talked to Goldhouse, I talked to Jeff Yang, I talked to a whole bunch of people. What can I do to, do something about this? I'm not sure what to do. And I was really and I saw a panel discussion with John Chu on it. And he says something that made me feel much better, which was he's I'm a baby activist. I don't know what I should be doing here. I'm okay, good, because that's how I feel too. I don't know what the hell's going on, And I'm but I know I want to do something.
Right,
and so
right.
That exploration finally led to this article and this piece, and then that finally was able for me to feel okay, I've done something that expresses how I've been feeling.
Well, it's funny because I've said this on the show before, and I kind of continue to say it, and that is that Asian Americans, again, we continue to try to break the stereotype because, in the past, we've been known as the group that doesn't speak up and we don't make waves, and, we keep our head down and follow the rules, right? Therefore, the model minority myth. Right. And so activism, even though there have been Asian American activists since the 60s, really, but it hasn't been, at the same level as other types of communities.
Right.
And so I think the baby activism, I think that's probably a perfect term, is that we're starting to grow more aware of the need for our community to become more active, to become more outspoken. Yeah. And so it makes me happy when I see people like you and John who have the platform and can reach an audience beyond our internal community to be able to educate, because that's what it's going to take.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
We can't
Completely.
just we can't just preach to the choir,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's going to say, yeah, I hate it too. I hate it too. But yeah, you got
Right.
to get people to think differently, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But also Asian Americans as well. We have to think differently, because one thing I
Yeah.
discovered in this whole process is that model minority myth or whatever. My parents leaned into that. They were first
Totally.
generation immigrants. And so I was conditioned to that was a good thing. Right. And it
Same
was
with me.
only during this process that I started to realize, oh, I get it now. Like, it is a trap. It is a way to make us conform. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, okay. Now we need to break away from that. We really need
Right.
to recognize art within our community. We need
Right.
to have solidarity within our community. That's crazy too, right?
And be
And
proud
then,
of our background and heritage and where we came from and our stories, right? That's why it's
yes,
important for that representation in media, entertainment, and all different industries where
right,
we can shape the correct narrative. Whereas
right.
before it was shaped by outsiders who didn't really care if they got it right
Exactly.
or
And
wrong.
then join forces with other people of color, because
Right.
racism is a fight against the people of color. And so we need to join forces together to be able to fight this thing. And I think African Americans have a heavier lead on us than we had. So we can learn a lot from them, I
Right.
think.
Right.
So it's really important that well, first of all, as an Asian American community, that's hard to, because I think when I grew up, I remember like Chinese were separate than Koreans and
Yes.
Japanese and blah, blah, blah. It was
Totally
very
true.
separate. But this generation needs to like really come together.
Yeah.
And also, Eastern Asians, Southeast Asians, everybody needs to get together and look at us as a group.
Yeah.
Going through the same issues. Yeah.
I think we have to have that solidarity, but we also, I think, have to educate each other as well as the outside world in terms of the differences. Because, of course, we see the mistake always made that, all Asians are the same, right? It's just this one
Absolutely,
giant group with like no differences whatsoever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's part of it too. It's like we have to be cohesive, but we also have to respect the differences that each Asian culture has and brings to
Yeah.
the table.
So it's complicated. It's very complicated. I think it's actually could possibly be more complicated than the African American situation, because we're so many different minutia groups under one group.
For sure, with different languages, and that's with the Latinx, community, at least they have also the common language that brings them together. And so, the Asian American AAPI community, it's very complex. And so we have to be able to dig deeper, and understand each other, and then, educate the rest of the world in terms of the differences. Right. So Daniel, let me read part of this article. Listen, I highlighted almost the entire article, and I'm like, I can't read the whole letter, So, but I love how you talk about the water metaphor that Bruce Lee always talked about, right? That's why his documentary is called Be Water, because he's saying water, can just change its shape to whatever form it needs to be, right?
Right.
And it
knows when to be hard, when to be soft.
Right. And I thought it's such a brilliant analogy. So you wrote here, this pandemic cannot be knocked out with one swift kick, and neither can systemic racism. A small trickle of water could eventually cut through the toughest rock. It is constantly flowing and moving forward. When met with an obstacle, it does not stop, but flows around it and eventually consumes it. When pushed, it moves out of the way, but does not get pushed back. It can flow and it can crash, and this is how we must face this fight. Whether white, black, brown, or yellow, we must face these times with strength, empathy, and compassion, and implore others to do the same while making sure not to get caught in the trap of becoming stone. That's beautiful, Daniel.
Thank you. I was trying to invoke Bruce's writing in that section there.
Well,
because Bruce was a very deep philosopher, and he had very intricate writing.
No idea how beautiful his writing was until I watched this documentary.
He is a true Renaissance man.
Totally.
Because even if you look at his handwriting is beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh, that's the first thing I noticed. I was like, oh my God, look at his penmanship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you see, he cared about everything he put down. And then even in his books where he talks about martial arts training, he draws these little figures, right? And you can tell he's a good artist as well.
Wow.
On top of that, so he was super well rounded. He read so much. He was a voracious reader, right? A lot of people don't know he had like very thick glasses.
Oh, he did. See, I didn't know that either. Yeah.
And he wore contact lenses for films, and he, if you look at footage from his home or anything like that, his library is incredible, and not just on martial arts and fighting, but it was like like philosophy and
Yeah.
thinking and, how to be a well-rounded person. Because I think what people forget is that, yeah, he was a badass kung fu guy on screen, but he was a very interesting person, like a very, very interesting person. And that's why his charisma was so appealing, because he had so much beyond what you saw on the surface.
He had so
It's
much depth.
deep.
Yeah, he had so much depth, and you can tell that he was a very deep thinker, right? And he also wanted to obviously put that in some of his movies. And I love this documentary because it talks about the fact that he fought to put more of the philosophical thinking in his movies, where some of the studio heads were like, no, we don't need that. But he was very committed to that. So I feel like after watching this documentary, I mean, I'm a Bruce Lee fan. Who isn't, right? Seriously, he's there's so many fans of Bruce Lee that just cross all genres and races and classes. But I didn't realize that he was so ahead of his time in so many ways.
Yeah, very,
right?
very,
Especially when it came to race, right? He
Very
really did want to break down those barriers. And I feel like,
and I think that had to do with, his upbringing. First of all, I think his mom is either a half or a quarter, which makes him an eighth or a quarter white.
yeah,
So he was mixed race. And so when he was learning Kung Fu, some of the Kung Fu schools turned him away because he wasn't pure Chinese, right? But then he's also growing up in colonized Hong Kong, British colonized Hong Kong, right? Then he comes to America in the 60s, right, while the civil rights movement's going on. So, he's just like inundated with it all, right? So he's very aware, whether he, I talk about whether, I'm not sure if he was an activist, and I don't think he actually was, but I think he was very aware of all these issues, and because he'd lived them, and he had definitely had clear-cut thinking about all that stuff. So when he came to the United States and started teaching, he was teaching anybody who was interested in what he was teaching. And so that meant there were some Latinx people, there were Black people, there were white people, there were Asians, all kinds of Asians. And then when he opened his school in Oakland, the Chinatown elders in San Francisco were like, "Nah, you can't teach that to Chinese people." And they sent someone, Wong Jack Man, to come and stop him from doing it. And they
famous
had a fight.
story. Yeah, exactly.
They had a literal fight over this, and Bruce beat him. And he wasn't happy with his results, but he still beat him, and he was able to continue teaching. So he actually physically got into a fight for the right to be able to teach, non-Chinese people Kung Fu. So he was definitely aware. And then go into like his life in Hollywood and all that, discrimination that he experienced there, creating, coming up with the idea for Kung Fu, the TV series, only to be told, no,
we need a white guy to play the Chinese.
Yeah, we need a white guy.
According to the documentary, he was devastated by that, and who wouldn't be, right? He came up with the idea, allegedly, right? And then they give it to David Carradine, and I grew up on watching that show.
I know, I watched it too
because it was like the only sort of kind of Asian-y show on, but it was the bane of my existence too, because I grew up in Ohio. I don't know if you know that. So in the 70s, and so I remember always in the playground, if I had $1 for every time this happened, I would be rich. A kid coming up to me, snatched this pebble from my hand, grasshopper. That line, right? But yeah, for Bruce, I feel when I was watching this, and then I knew I was going to be interviewing you. I thought, wow, Daniel has sort of done a similar thing that Bruce Lee did back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
You came from Hong Kong where you had made a name for yourself, but then you come to the United States and, you're trying to break down these barriers, and you do get a leading role as an Asian man in a television series, but you get it and you break down stereotypes, whereas Bruce tried and he failed.
Right.
And so did you ever think of that parallel?
Yeah, definitely. Like when we were making my show, because it's a post-apocalyptic Western style martial arts drama. Yeah. It did not escape me that Bruce was trying to do that with a Western, right? And so, while making it, I was definitely quite proud of the fact that I was able to do something that, he wasn't able to do. And then later Shannon was actually finally able to make Warrior, which was a version of what he wanted to do. But we started first. So during that time, I was like, I was able to right that wrong, So it felt like it was internal, like I internalized it, but I definitely felt proud of that fact.
How did he influence you though? I mean, I'm sure there were many influences, but he was the first Asian guy on television or in movies that actually played a hero, not a bad guy, not a villain. And he was freaking cool.
Yeah, he was cool. That was the thing. It was like, he was so cool. Like his, the way he looked at people, or even just the way he conducted himself in interviews. He had he had all the proper slang and lingo. You know, he had a slight accent, but he kept saying groovy and man and all that kind of stuff. So it was like, you know, he was very of the times, but also, you know, like it was the charisma really that just drew me to him, you know.
Totally.
And I think it was the fact that, you know, growing up in the United States, this is the only guy I saw on TV that looked like me. But then he was cool on top of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I attached myself to that, and that's why I started learning martial arts. You know, and,
because of Bruce.
And, yeah, totally.
Wow.
And then I actually wanted to be, at one point when I was like 12 or 13, I was asking my mom if I could be a philosophy major, because he was a philosophy major at UW, right? My mom's like, I don't think you can make any money doing that. So I dropped that. But you know, I started reading philosophy because that's what he did, right? Huh. And, you know, at 13 years old, not many 13, 14-year-old boys like are into reading philosophy, but I did it because I would read his books and he referred to, you know, the philosophy that he was studying at the time. And so that got me into it. So yeah, I mean, in all levels, I was very heavily influenced by him. In so many ways. And I think a lot of people, even amongst the Asian American community, don't realize like how well-rounded he was and what he did other than, you know, martial arts in those 4 movies. He only did 4 movies. You know, people think he did a whole bunch of movies, right? It was only 4. And Game of Death is kind of half of one, right?
Half of one, yeah. But still, of course, the tragedy is that, you know, he died 10 days before Enter the Dragon premiered, right? Yeah. Which was the most amazing movie that is so iconic that, you know, I don't think anybody has not seen it. Maybe that's too far-fetched, but we all know the story about that. But yeah, for such a short life, 32 years old, he died, right? The impact and the influence that he still has to this day is amazing.
I mean, it's amazing. And I think it is because of all that substance he had is why it's lasted so long, you know,
right.
And why he's become so iconic.
Right. For you though, going back to, you know, the parallel that, you know, we can draw with you and Bruce. So Into the Badlands, I mean, it was 3 seasons, but you know, the first season started off with it was a little bit rocky, and then the season 2 and 3, you know, you really found a groove and your audience, right? Yeah. So when you were making this TV show, what were you thinking? Because I remember reading that you weren't even supposed to be in the leading role. You were just supposed to be a martial arts
I was the producer. I was an executive producer, and I was just setting up the martial arts side of the production, because my producing partner, she had done a lot of stuff, but she'd never done martial arts before. Okay. And so she's like, I have no idea how to put that part of the thing together. Can you help me produce this part? I'm like, yeah, sure. I said, the only way you can do it for TV is by using a Hong Kong stunt team, because we move like really fast, really quick. Right. And so we started setting that up, and then we started setting up the show. And I wasn't sure what the tone of the show was going to be, because the conversation of the show, the genesis of it was, Stacey Sherrill was with one of the AMC execs at a premiere of Man with the Iron Fist, the RZA movie. Yep. Right. And I was in that. I played a cameo role in it. And they walked out of that going, why isn't there any Kung Fu shows on TV? Let's do one. Right. So that's how I got involved. But I was thinking, okay, if it's going to be kitsch like that, like, I'm not sure I want to be the lead. Right. I don't mind being involved in it. But if it's kitsch, like, I'm not sure I want to do something like that. So, I mean, it was fun. But for a whole series, I'm not sure I want to, you know, do that kind of genre. And so I didn't commit. And so we wrote the thing, we found the writers, we wrote the thing, the pilot was written, and I was like, oh, this is not bad. It's actually pretty cool. And then I started to see the visuals of the world building part. I was like, oh, this is very cool. Like the post-apocalyptic issue and how they were designing the world. It was like really cool steampunk stuff, and how they're setting up the barons and all the structure. And I was like, oh, this is very cool. Yeah. Because the structure of this is exactly like a Chinese wuxia movie, like a swordsman movie, but put in this post-apocalyptic American situation. It's like, okay, I think I'm into this now. And so prior to that, I said, okay, look, we need to cast the net wide. We need to find someone in their late 20s and early 30s, because if this goes on for 6 to 8 seasons, you know, we need someone young that can fight that much. You know what I mean? Like that. I was 40 at the time, so I didn't even think of myself. Oh, you know, I'd stopped doing this level of action for like 3 or 4 years.
Because that show was so physical, Daniel. Oh my God.
I had torn my ACL 15 years ago. I had broken my leg 10 years ago. I had various injuries that made me not want to continue in this genre. You know? I was managed by Jackie Chan for 11 years. So like I saw the pain
Right.
constant pain that he'd been in. And I was like,
Right.
I don't want that to happen to me. So if I have a choice, I'd rather do other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why I didn't put myself forward. I was like, I'm 40 now. And if we have to go on for 6, 7, 8 seasons, like, I'm not sure if my body's going to be able to hold up.
Right. Right.
And so we cast the net far and wide. We were looking for someone like in their late 20s to mid 30s, and they wanted someone Asian. They wanted someone who's a good actor, a good fighter, spoke English well, and was well known. And I was like, that's
a lot.
Not many people, right? But
Yeah.
we casted everybody. We went to martial arts schools, found great martial artists, but we're not good actors. Found great actors that could not move. And so it was like, stuck in this position. And then it came down to like 3 people. And then my partners were like, Daniel, why aren't you putting yourself forward? And I told them why. I was like, I don't think I can do it physically and all this stuff. And they're like, please, can you just do the audition? I'm like, okay, all right, I'll do it. And then I said, let me train for like a month and see if I can get back into some sort of shape.
Okay.
Because I knew I wasn't at the level that I wanted to be for something like this. And so I started training and I was like, oh, I'm actually feeling okay. I'm not as bad in pain as I thought I'd be. And so I auditioned and then they're like, okay, you're going to do it. So I'm like, okay.
So you kind of had no choice.
Played the role. Yeah. I ended up taking on the role. And I actually it's probably one of my most favorite projects I've worked on out of almost 70 films. And then this TV series, I think this is one of the most interesting because of what we ended up making it out of. We moved to Ireland after the first season. We were in New Orleans. We moved to Ireland. That's when the show got better, right? Visually, it got better, all this kind of stuff. But it was an amazing production because we had, stunt guys from China, choreographer from Hong Kong, director from Hong Kong. We had Americans, we had British, we had other people from all over Europe, Italians in our costume department, all working on this thing together.
Yeah.
And, that's the kind of a recipe for disaster sometimes, right? Multicultures working together, with different styles. But it worked beautifully. And we were on set and you could hear Chinese and you could hear Italian, you could hear English. And it was like, wow, this is so amazing.
But that's how how the world should work,
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we took that and we reflected it into the show by like casting diverse with the main characters, but also casting diverse with the extras as well. And that's a hard thing to do in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because Ireland's very white.
Right, exactly.
So we had to go beyond the normal like casting agencies and go out to like, we had to send our production assistants to go out in the street and find people, people of color and go, hey, you want to be an extra on the TV show, do that.
Which is what I loved about Into the Badlands. And by the way, I did watch the series because I'm a huge action film and television lover. Probably because I have an older brother and that was a big influence on me. So I loved all that stuff. So he's the one who actually introduced me to the show. But yeah, that's what I loved about the show. There are many things about the show that I love, but the diversity. It's like I saw the intent, in terms of trying to create this diverse world, right? That hopefully does reflect, the future as well as now. But it definitely
if you're talking about like a couple hundred years in the future, everybody's going to be brown.
Exactly.
Really.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to accept that reality. And so, we wanted to make that world reflect on what we thought it would be, and that came from everything from like, the clothes and things like that. But one thing was the people, what kind of people be walking around in that time,
Right.
And so we wanted it to be reflective of that.
Which I thought is good. Yeah.
No matter how difficult it was to do that.
Right. So 3 seasons and then it got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know it was going to get canceled? I mean, how does that work? And how did you feel about that?
Yeah, there was various writings on the wall. Like there was a regime change at AMC. We were a very expensive show because in order to pull our show off, we had to have two crews filming simultaneously. So we had to have action filming 7 days a week or 6 days a week and drama filming 6 days a week, right?
So it's like a movie.
Yeah.
So you had
even movies. Yeah. They have a splinter unit, second unit. Because often films action. So we were doing that in, all the way through. So 2 crews of 150 people each, cranking on this. So it was very expensive and there was no other way to do it because, you'll see other martial arts shows on TV right now and they fail because they allot a week time to shoot one episode and they'll shoot like 4 days of drama and then 1 or 2 days of action. Whereas like we'll spend 6 days on one fight scene.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so that's how we can get that level of action in the show.
Okay.
Is to spend all that time. Sometimes we spend like 9 or 10 days on a big scene, it
Dang.
depends. So it's like movie level
Yeah. You can tell.
production value. Yeah.
But you could
Yeah.
totally tell, the
Yeah.
production quality for sure. Yeah. Okay.
But
So
yeah,
it was
but that
expensive.
eventually led to our
Your demise.
breaking down. We're expensive. There's a regime change, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And then also, it's TV has changed. It's a lot of people don't watch, live or even within the next few days of it airing. They wait for it to come out on Netflix, and it's hard for a studio like AMC to judge like actually how many people are watching.
Right. Right.
And how they can see that revenue come back. So
have you seen a resurgence of popularity because it's on Netflix?
Yeah, I've noticed some new fans coming like to my social media because they just discovered it. Like during Shelter in Place, they discovered this new show to binge. Right. And so and then they're like, I just discovered the show, but I just found out it was canceled and there's not going to be season 4. I'm so bummed out, that kind of thing. But definitely, yeah. Okay. And it's also very far reaching. Like I get messages from Nigeria, from Eastern Europe.
I'm not surprised.
All over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's because it to me, it's like a typical kung fu movie, but then it's like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I mean, it's everything mixed together, which I think is why it has such a wide appeal. Yeah,
I mean, we tried to construct it to make it like a Comic-Con's dream show.
Yes.
Like all the aspects of Comic-Con.
Totally.
One show. Yeah.
That's awesome. So now that Into the Badlands is over, you, I know, are working on other things. So,
yes.
Were you, okay, I'll go back to this. You said you were afraid to take on that role because if you went 6 or 7 seasons, your body wouldn't last or it just would be too taxing. Right. So in some ways, were you a little bit like, oh, phew, I don't have to do this for much longer when it got canceled?
Yeah, my body is definitely thanking me because it was rough. It was rough. I mean, here's an example. When you make a movie, like a kung fu movie, right? There's maybe 3 or 4 fight scenes in the whole movie that takes place over 6 months, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We, in season 3 alone, in those 16 episodes, we had 40 fight scenes. And I was in 32 of them, I think.
Oh my God.
Right? So it's a lot. It's a lot for your body to go through in that short amount of time.
And are you choreographing those fight scenes as well?
No. We have a choreographer, Didi Koo. He worked on, Crouching Tiger. He worked on Matrix, all that kind of stuff. Very high level, very experienced, and he does all the choreography.
Okay.
Stephen Fung, my producing partner, directed a lot of the action, so he directed some of the fight scenes themselves.
Okay.
And then, so I just, as an executive producer, I just make sure that everybody has their tools that they need for all that. We built the stunt team, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, but that's a lot of action in a short period of time.
It's a lot, and you're talking like 12, 14-hour days of work. It's pretty rough.
Dude, you must have gotten hurt. Did you get hurt a couple times?
So the first season I broke my ribs on one thing. Season 2, and this would be even stupid, I wasn't even doing action. I was on the roof of a building and I slipped and I sprained my knee.
Oh no.
And we had to do was one fight left for me. It was near the end of the season. And it was the last fight of me fighting Quinn, my Baron.
Yep.
Right. And it was 2 weeks away. And I go to the doctor and he goes, you need to rest for like 6 to 8 weeks. I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I need to be able to do this scene, right? And so I was talking to this Romanian stunt guy about it, and I was really bummed out. I felt like Steph Curry on the Warriors when he couldn't make it to the one of the playoff games or series because he was injured, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be there for my team, and they're like, no, it's fine, we'll just put a double in, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, but I want to do this. I did it all season. I want to do this, And so I talked to the stuntman. He recommended this thing. It's a natural pill called wobenzine that can help you heal sprains and stuff faster. So I just pounded that.
Oh my God, really?
And then I was actually fine. By 2 weeks, I was a little stiff, but I just put a knee brace on and I was able to complete the fight. So, but this stuff was happening to me all the time and to our whole team. To the actors and to the stuntmen, because you have to think about it. We're doing this every day for 12 hours a day.
And not just every day, 12 hours a day, but this is hardcore action. That's why it was so good, because it looks so real and authentic and really rough.
We had a really good team. We had a really great team of people who really understood the Hong Kong style, which is what we're trying to do.
Totally.
And even though they were Europeans and all that, they were fans of the Hong Kong style, so they had studied it, so they knew how to do it. It's a different thing. The pacing's different, the speed is different, the way we do things is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's very physically demanding, and those guys constantly injured all the time. We had a full-time physiotherapist on set. who was there to help people with any kind of issue. I mean, it was like managing a team, a sports team.
Yeah.
We had 20 people that were constantly moving every day,
right.
And so we had to like make sure that all their needs are met.
Wow. So that was probably the most physical for a long period of time that you've probably ever been.
Yeah. It was like, I would say it was a total of 5 years. And even in the off season, I had to keep training to make sure that I stayed in shape. So when we came back, I would be on,
Right. Right. You worked for Jackie Chan, you said, for 11 years. And I interviewed Maggie Q recently for the show, and she had worked with Jackie as well. And she said that Jackie was so hardcore, never let up. And he also never gave anyone praise. That's what she said, that he just wanted you to just keep working, and just never wanted to allow you to get too soft. And so she said she's never seen anyone work harder in her life.
Yeah, he's definitely a workaholic. He cannot sit still. I think he has ADDH actually constantly. I think that's why, because so if he's not working on a movie, he's doing some kind of business deal, or he's inventing some product, or he's like, he's a distributor for like Segway in Asia and a bunch of other brands too, as well as like he designs and has people make things, products, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. He's crazy. He's working all the time.
Wow.
And so, and even like the movies, he's made like, I don't know, I want to say like 100 movies in that. It's a lot.
Yeah.
He's prolific.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was more.
A lot of my work ethic has come from him as well. Being around him for all those years, you definitely, you learn something through osmosis. But he also, I don't agree that he doesn't praise people. He thought of me as like almost like a second son in some ways. His son is like, I think he's like 10 years younger than me.
Okay.
And a lot of times like he couldn't deal with his son, and he knew his son looked up to me. So he would call me up and go, "Hey, tell him to stop playing video games so much, or tell him to do this, or tell him that," because he doesn't listen to me, so I would do that every once in a while. But Jackie had a lot of praise for me as well, because I learned to work hard from him. And so the movies that we worked on, I worked my ass off, and he would oftentimes say, "I'm glad to see that you're not taking your job lightly, that you work hard, and that you're taking the opportunity that's been given to you and working really hard."
Right.
He would always say that to me, to the point of like embarrassment. So
right. Well, that's good. So he gave you that encouragement.
He was definitely a good mentor to have, for sure.
But tough, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, he doesn't praise his team members, like the stunt team. It's like he comes from a really like crazy situation where he was in this Chinese opera school. He was kind of like leased out to them when he was 3 years old, and they bust their asses, training every day.
They're harsh,
and it was harsh. It's like it was like a real fraternity.
Yeah.
If you didn't fall in line, you got beat.
Yeah.
You had to respect the elders, right?
Right.
I've seen Jackie with Sammo Hung, right? Sammo Hung was his older brother, right? And Jackie completely changes when he's around him.
Oh.
Like Jackie's the big brother all the time. He's the boss, right? But when he sees Sammo, he totally defers to him and becomes the little brother. And it's kind of interesting to watch, because you never see Jackie in that way.
Yeah.
But that whole lifestyle, their whole life was like that. And so that's where all that discipline and hard work comes
you can't deprogram that very quickly, can you?
No, it's like military training.
Yeah, totally. Hey, what I realized, that you went to Hong Kong in 1997, right? That was the first time.
Yep.
So that's when I went to Hong Kong.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was working for CNN. I was the CNN anchor in Hong Kong. I went there right before the handover in June.
Yes.
Right. So I was in Hong Kong for 3.5 years.
Okay.
So so we may have crossed paths. Who knows?
Yeah. Now that I think of it, I didn't have a TV for the first few years.
Oh, okay. So you never saw me.
I was really broken poor in the first few years.
Okay.
But I didn't have cable.
Yeah.
I just had a DVD player or a VCD player and a TV. That's all.
How funny.
But
well, no. So we were there at the same time.
Though that the '97 the handover was interesting. It was like 2 weeks of partying.
I'll tell you something. It was really interesting, because as a journalist, so it was like the biggest story, for decades, and so the world descended upon Hong Kong, especially media.
Right.
I mean, there were thousands of media who came to cover it, and we thought, honestly, before the handover happened, we were all like, "This is going to be like the most over-reported under event." That's what we all kept on saying, because we just thought it wouldn't be a big deal. Okay, ceremony, whatever. But what we didn't expect was the emotional aspect of the story, and historically what this meant, and the depth of what Hong Kong people were feeling at the time. And so that was a really interesting time to be there for sure, as both someone living there and then also covering it. So yeah, it was fun though. It was definitely fun.
I really love Hong Kong. Like I'm glad that I grew up there. My formative years were there.
Yeah.
Because, well, first of all, I was talking about like not being a minority. That was a freeing experience, you know, like going there and feeling like I'm with my people.
But you didn't speak Cantonese or Mandarin,
not
right?
when I first arrived, right?
Not when you first
so
arrived,
in the beginning,
right?
They would call me white boy, guai zai, you know, that kind of stuff. But then finally, you know, after having some success in the films, I got accepted into the fold, and it just was, you know, a great experience to not have to think about race anymore. You know, that's one thing. You know,
it's true. It's true.
And then just the mentality of the people there. Like they're go-getters. Hong Kong people are go-getters.
They don't stop. They do not stop.
Figure out a way to get something done, you know, and it's great. It's
Daniel, okay, I tell this story to people to explain the pace of Hong Kong. You know, so I said, there are two things. When I moved from Hong Kong to New York City, the two things I said to myself when I was walking around Manhattan was like, wow, there's so much space here. And then the second thing was like, everyone's so nice here and they're not moving so quickly. Because the other story I say is like in Hong Kong, every door close button on an elevator is no. It's like down. Rubbed off. Yeah, because everybody's like, because they just have to get somewhere really quickly and they will not stop for a second because they want to keep going. It's an intense pace there.
I've picked up those habits.
Did you? So
I'm a door close pusher. and I'm very impatient with like services here in the States. It's like, I'm like, why are you so slow?
No, dude.
Why does it take 3 days to do this one
thing?
There's
no service better than in Asia, especially in places like Hong Kong, because everything is efficient and quick and, you know? Yeah. I miss that too, for sure. So, but you were there for much longer than I was, but but you know, Asia is an interesting place to, you know, be as an Asian, like you said. When I moved to Tokyo and then I was in Hong Kong and then I went back to Singapore, I felt like, I was part of the majority, right? Yeah, and I would say to my non-Asian friends who lived there, I said, now you know what it feels like to be a minority. You know? And I wish everybody would experience this. Then you would have a better sense of what racism and feeling like the other is like.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You have a 6-year-old daughter, right?
Yeah, she just turned 7 last week.
She just turned 7. So I wonder, in this world that we're living in, and I always wonder, because I'm not a parent, but I do wonder about all of my friends who have kids. What do you think when you look at your daughter and you see what's going on around you? I mean, are you fearful? Are you more mindful? I mean, what goes through your head?
Yeah, so I'll tell you something really interesting. I was like, during the time, like right when COVID was happening, and I was like, you know, upset and confused about all the anti-Asian hate crime stuff. She had done a project for school, this distance learning, where she sang a song, sent it in to the teacher, and then he edited together with all the other students and then played it back. So it sounded like they're all singing together. Okay. And the song was "This Land Is Your Land."
Oh. Okay.
And I heard the song, and I heard her play it. It sounded so beautiful. These young, innocent voices singing this song. She goes to a Chinese immersion school too. So it's all, you know, it's 70% Chinese kids and then some mixed race and then black and white kids, right?
Okay.
But it's a very diverse group of kids, right? Singing the song. And then I couldn't help but like my mind go, this song is not true.
Oh.
You know, like this land is not made for you and me. It's made for a select few, you know? Yeah. And it was like, it hurt me because I obviously couldn't explain that to her.
Yeah, of course not.
Bust her bubble, right?
I know. But you know, isn't that amazing?
That was beautiful, but
no. But I mean, for you, it's just like, wow, you look at that song so differently now.
And that was the first time that ever hit me, that feeling ever hit me. And I was like, oh, this is a terrible feeling to have. And what can I do to like abate this feeling? Like, I'm going to have to educate. I'm going to have to spend a lot of time educating her, showing her, you know, the nuances of growing up in this country as a mixed race child, because her mom's Jewish and she's half Jewish, half Chinese, you know, and so you know how she's going to deal with that, how she's going to get it on both sides, you know. The white community will not accept her probably, and the Asian community may not accept her in some way. Yeah. You know? So she's going to have to, you know, understand that. I just showed her the CNN town hall on Sesame Street, town hall on racism.
Oh,
and watch that, you know, so she's getting it, but she still doesn't get it. Like I go, so do you understand like what racism is? She goes, no, I still don't get it. I go, what do you not get? And she goes, I don't get why people do that to each other. I'm like,
God, see, that's what it's not,
it made me tear up right now.
Racism is taught. It's, you know,
Yes.
you're not born a racist. That's why kids like don't see it until they're taught this. Oh God. Yeah.
So it was like, it's hard. So it's like, now it's like, okay, when do you talk about what, you know? So I'm just trying to make sure that the dialogue is open and that, you know, she can come and talk to us anytime about these kind of issues, you know?
Right.
Because she's definitely going to experience it, I'm sure, you know?
Yeah. Did you experience racism when you were growing up? Because you grew up in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was straight up racism. I would say it was more ignorance. You know, more like, oh.
No name calling?
Trying to think. Okay, here's what interesting. I grew up in a white neighborhood, in a white town. I went to an elementary school where I was friends with this Japanese American kid and a Filipino American kid.
Okay.
The Filipino American kid was 2 years older than us because he had come from like a really bad public school and had to stay back. So he was tougher.
Okay.
So nobody messed with us.
Okay. Oh,
so,
okay.
So I had a really interesting experience. And then my next door neighbor was the only black kid in town.
Okay.
So I understood that stuff very early, but I never felt like harshly discriminated against. Like maybe some name calling here and there, but never getting like threatened to beat up. Okay. Because that guy Mario would beat up people, you know, who's in part of our group.
Guy. Okay.
You know? We were also the fastest in our class, so we were on the relay team. So it was me, the three of us, and then one white kid. Oh. Right. So we had a little bit of status in the school, so I didn't really feel it, you know. But once I went to high school. It was a very diverse high school, and you know there wasn't much of that. And in the Bay Area, again, there's a lot of Asians here. It wasn't until I went to Oregon for college that I started to understand how undiverse the country was.
It's pretty wide.
The Bay Area is so diverse.
Yes, right.
And even though I was living in a white suburb, you know, Oakland Chinatown, San Francisco Chinatown is 20 minutes away. You know, it's right there. But Oregon was a whole different story. You know. And so, like, I remember it was 92. I turned 18 that year and I could vote. So I was walking into the voting thing, and the woman goes, "You can't vote." And I go, "Why?" And she goes, "You have to be a U.S. citizen." And I go, "I am a U.S. citizen." I said, I just assumed you weren't. I'm like, okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah,
you know, things like that.
It
wasn't racism. It was more like just ignorance.
Yeah, I mean, but it is that's implicit bias,
now I'm realizing
right?
now
it's implicit
part of
racism. Yeah, because they're programmed to think non-white face can't be American, right?
Right.
So
right. Or you get this one all the time, like, oh, you're Chinese. How's your Japanese? You know, it's like, are you listening to what you're saying? Like, you're Chinese. How's your Japanese? You know, it's like, can you speak Japanese? It's like ridiculous. That kind of stuff. No, but never.
I've heard them all.
Never.
I've heard them all.
Never anything that would make me, you know, have identity issues growing up. You know,
well, that's good.
I was pretty proud to be Asian. I would have
you
to say
were.
that.
Oh, that's great, Daniel, because I was not, and I've openly said that.
I think Ohio is a different situation.
Yeah, Ohio is very different, and I wanted to be white. I wanted blue eyes. I wanted blonde hair. I even wanted to change my name to Mary, you know, because Mary was weird.
Right.
And so, the identity crisis definitely I suffered with because, again, I was growing up in a white state.
Sure.
And I did get the racism. For sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. But it made me stronger. It made me much more aware at a very young age. That's why I ask about your daughter, because I think it's tough, because do you tell them early on so they're really aware, or do you kind of just, you know, sort of ease into it? And
that was the thing, is like, tough. You know, my experience now of like telling her early, and she's just kind of not really understanding it.
Yeah.
But I want to plant that seed there so that when it does happen, she can relate it to that and not be like, why is this happening? You know?
Exactly.
And then obviously when it does happen, she'll probably have.
And again, I mean, I always worry about kids in this day and age of social media, because there's so much of the negativity and the lies and the bullying and all of that they're growing up with, right? Even for me, because since I started the show, and I'm sure you get it because of your platform, the trolls come out and you know the negativity and the some of the horrible things that people can say because they're just sitting there behind their phone doing whatever they want, right?
Yeah. I often say it in my face.
Say it to my face.
I'm fine with you saying it to my face if you have the balls to do it. You know?
That's what I think. It's just like, and if you have the conviction, if you really believe in what you're saying, then you should be able to come out from behind the screen and say it with some conviction. But most of these people are cowards. And namely...
And that was what was so infuriating about all this, the COVID stuff. It was like cowardly behavior coming from cowardly people, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, dude, use some logic. Like, it makes no sense to like go attack a Filipino family for what you think is Chinese COVID. You know, it's like crazy. It's just stupid.
I know. But let's be real, Daniel. It's being fueled by somebody with a very powerful pulpit.
Yes.
Who just recently, in a press conference or something, he called it once again. He called it the China plague this time, and he said it off the cuff. Look, we all know who we're talking about. We're talking about President Donald Trump. Okay, so he said it off the cuff. It wasn't even a prepared statement. So that is part of his psyche. If someone says something like that off the cuff, it's part of who he is. It's in his DNA, right? So when he claims that he's not a racist and he's not fueling anything, it's bullshit. It's such bullshit. Completely. Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, this could go on for hours talking about him, but
I know.
But yeah, it's insane. There was a time where we were filming in Ireland when he got elected, all the way coming up to that moment, we were joking about how, like, if he gets elected, we're not moving back. And then it happened.
And you're like,
full day of not speaking at all. We're just like in a daze, like,
shell shocked.
What do we do now? What do we do now? Like, I remember that day we were working. That morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. to go to work, and I look at in my phone, and when I went to bed the night before, it was like, Hillary's got this, right? And I woke up at 5, and like, it looks like Trump is about to win. And then when I sat down in the makeup chair, he won. And we all our entire cast, we were just completely speechless. Yeah, we didn't know what to say. The whole day was a really weird, awkward day.
I couldn't imagine having had to work that day if I had to. Yeah, thank God I didn't, because I think I was paralyzed.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was shocking. I know. So 2020 in that way is very important too. Look, I always say, I don't care what your political slant is. If you don't vote, you are not exercising a privilege that we're all given.
I mean, you have to think, a lot of people around the world don't have this right? So
a lot of people they die for the right to vote, right? And so for us to sit on our asses and not exercise that right that we're given in this country, then you have no right to complain about anything.
Exactly.
If you're not going to have your voice heard in that manner. So I'm pushing for that constantly on the show, is that if you feel like you can't do anything, well, one thing you can do is vote. And that's one of the easiest
and not
things.
Even just for the president. I mean, you have to look at your local, because I think those make the biggest differences. The local places where you live and where they can implement changes on that level, where you can see it on a daily basis. That's most important.
That's right.
A lot of people go, I'll just vote for president, right? But no, those ones affect you as well too.
No, I don't know if you read the article that Barack Obama wrote. It came out about a week ago, and he was talking about actionable steps that people can take, and one of them being voting on all levels, from local all the way up to national elections, because on the local level is where you elect people like your DA and your police, the sheriff, and all these people who actually make a direct impact on your community. And so right now, because of what's happening with policing and, jurisdictions and all that.
More important than ever.
More important than ever. So, people have to realize that it really does matter. And Asian Americans, our voter turnout isn't so good in the past. It hasn't been so good in the past. So we really have to rally. If you care about what's going on, I don't want to hear you bitch online and then not do anything about it. Right? Yeah. Listen, Daniel, before we go, I want to just talk about the projects that you're working on, right?
Sure.
Because you have some things coming up, right? Even though production has been sort of at a standstill. So from an artistic point of view for you guys in Hollywood, what has been happening? I mean, you guys haven't been able to do anything, right?
Yeah, it's been crazy. And, this is totally unprecedented like everything else, but it's never been like not one single film production going on around the world, right? I mean, things are just starting now. I know there's one going in Iceland and one going in Australia right now, but to have that happen for like that long of a period is crazy, right? To have no content being made. But it was interesting. I had a story because there's a project that I want to direct, a co-production for China and the US in the future. And I was just about to get pre-production funding in China. And this is like, I was discussing this in November, we were negotiating it, in December, we're negotiating it. And then we're just about to get the budget in January. And then obviously COVID was happening over there. And so everything shut down.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So I twiddled my thumbs for a month. I'm like, okay, well, this is a co-production. So let's go down to LA and start looking there for production money. And so I started having meetings, and that was the week everything got shut down. So God. Monday I had a meeting, Tuesday I had a meeting, and then Tuesday afternoon meetings got canceled. Wednesday got completely canceled, and then I just flew back up here, and they got all put on pause.
Yeah.
So that project is on pause, obviously. But prior to COVID happening, I was working on a project that I'm producing. It's based on a series of movies I did in Hong Kong called Overheard.
Okay.
And we're taking it putting it into a long form TV series.
Oh, cool.
And we just got picked up at Christmas. So we're working on that now. It's called Overheard. And it's interesting. It's about three cops. The first one was about three cops who have bugged this triad group, right? And they're trying to bust this group for doing some illegal activity. But then they hear some insider trading tips. And they're like, well, this has nothing to do with our case, but, wouldn't hurt if we invested on this too. Oh my God,
how funny.
So they get in on it, and then it snowballs into this giant problem for them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about the morality of it, obviously, of whether that is, a crime or not.
Right.
But then, the trouble they get into for questioning that and for going for it. So we're doing that as in the US TV series format, long-term format. It will happen in New York as Hong Kong. So that's going. And then I just recently in November, I finished a film called Reminiscence that was directed by Lisa Joy.
Of Westworld.
And that was amazing because talking about like diversity, she's, half Chinese. She was raised by a tiger mom. So she's very Chinese. She speaks fluent Mandarin.
Oh, she does?
She went to Stanford and I think Princeton or Yale, I forgot. Ivy League student. Was not allowed to watch TV at all during her youth. So it's ironic that she's become a TV writer. She wrote, she writes Westworld. And
which I love.
With her husband, Jonathan Nolan. Yeah, amazing show. I love that show too. Huge fan of that show. Yep. So incredibly smart woman. So it was amazing to be on set and watching her direct this huge, like $100 million movie.
And this is her directorial debut, right?
Yeah. I think she's directed a couple episodes of Westworld, but this is the first movie she's directed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a big one.
Yeah.
But she won the Blacklist Prize for the script, and that's how it got funded. And just sitting on set watching her, work was just a proud moment for me because I'm seeing this sister, just command this set.
Oh,
because she's strong. She's real strong. Yeah.
I need to get her on the show. I would love to talk to her. She
really knows what she's doing. You really should. And she really knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
And she's fearless. And it was just amazing to see a strong Asian woman do that on the set. Because I've rarely seen that,
Yes.
I worked with Asian female directors in Asia, but never here, right? So to see that, it's great. I was proud, very proud.
Yeah.
And then the way she approached me for this role was, I play the bad guy, but she's like, I know this is a bad guy, but I want you to be like sexy and evil and scary, but tough and strong.
Yeah.
And not emasculated like you've seen with Asian male characters on screen.
Good.
So when she said that, I'm like, okay, you don't even have to show me the script. I'm in.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm in. I get it. And she's like, and I want you to play this role. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I got the script and it was amazing. It's this amazing bit of writing. It's a sci-fi kind of film noir type of thing. I can't go into the details about it, but
Hugh Jackman is in it as well, right?
Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson.
Okay.
Who else? I can't think off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
But those are the ones I worked with.
But
Tandy Newton. Newton
that's right. So have you shot it yet, or
I shot it.
You already shot it.
They're done. So it should come out about probably January, February of next year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's called Reminiscence, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another project you're working on called Caught in Time.
That was a film I finished last year. Okay. Right after Badlands finished, I went back to China to do this movie.
Okay.
And it got put on hold. The release got put on hold because of COVID.
Yeah.
Then now we're not sure when it's going to get released, so we're kind of just waiting.
Okay.
But that was a movie that I tried to do one project there and one project here over a year's
I see.
time.
Yep. Yep.
And so this one was really interesting because it's a Hong Kong director, but it takes place in China. It's a heist film based on a true story about this guy in the 90s in China that went around like robbing banks and jewelry stores because there was no technology, there was no CCTV, nothing.
Okay.
And so he just went on this spree. So it's kind of like Heat and Catch Me If You Can combined together, because he starts messing with the cops, leaving clues for them and all this stuff. And eventually he's stupid, he got caught and executed. But it's an interesting story about an interesting time in China where, you could have got away with a lot.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pending in terms of its release. Just like so many other finished, films are.
Yeah. Mulan, like what's going to happen?
I know exactly. God, and that was just about to come out too. Isn't that amazing?
They had the premiere that week, and then
it's crazy. I know. So, final question then for you then. In terms of where things stand now, because like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, announced that TV and film production can start up on June 12th. He just announced that, right? So I think people are celebrating, but it is going to be a different world.
Yeah,
right? You're not going to be able to just go back to doing the way things were because of COVID still exists. And so people are afraid that this is really going to have a negative impact on how films and TV shows are made now. So,
they're going to have to think about what the process is going to be to do that. I know that production in Iceland, the director came up with a system of like the crews that need to be together, are one color armband, and then like the actors and makeup are another color armband. So like you have resting areas that are your color.
Wow.
and then groups that you can be with, but you can't intermix.
Right.
So not racism. This is like separating people again.
But think about it, Daniel. But like, think about like, what about like fight scenes or where you have to get very physical, or what about like
or an intimate scene?
I was just gonna say like sex scenes and stuff. Like you're not gonna want to do that.
Right.
Unless I guess you get tested.
I guess you could get tested, right? You could get tested and then go into it. I guess. Right. So I imagine what it's going to be is like the actors will hang out together, actors and makeup, and everyone that touches an actor will be one group. Film, camera, and lighting will be another group. Directors probably another group. It's like you're going to have to do that.
It's going to be weird.
So that everyone's not all on top of each other.
Right. It's going to be kind of crazy though. So
we'll see. We'll see how effective it'll be. I mean, I don't know. It's like,
exactly. New normal. Everything's a new normal. But anyway.
I want to see actually what happens to the numbers in the next week or so after, all these protests.
Exactly.
Everyone getting together and see what's going to happen.
My fear, look, we have to speak up about, these injustices for sure. And that's why you have tens and thousands, hundreds. I just read that protests took place in 50 states, all 50 states and 18 countries, making it the biggest protest for civil rights in history.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow. It's amazing. That's really amazing.
It's so moving, but at the same time, of course, it's worrying because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So again, I think we're just going to have to kind of wait and see what happens. But boy, are we living in interesting times or what?
Oh, you say that again. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like it's funny because I'm trying to tell my daughter, I'm like, this is not normal. Like, all these things that are happening is like my whole life, 45 years, I've never seen anything like this. No. And to have it all compacted into like this one short period is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
as a journalist, I've covered a lot of major events around the world, and I've never seen things converge like this at the same time. Ever.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely interesting times, definitely a lot to learn, and definitely like, I really think that this is a time where we've kind of reset ourselves in some way. And there's obviously a lot of negatives, but there's a lot of good positives that are coming from this. So
I think so. And I hope people do take the time and reset themselves and do some self-reflection, right? And self-assessment. And also reprioritizing things. Let's hope for the better. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, Daniel, I loved talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
This is a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to come on.
No, and we'll keep in touch. And I look forward to all the projects that you have coming up in the future. But please take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
And
thanks for doing this show, because I honestly, like, there was a period during this period where I was lost. And like finding things like this made me feel like, okay, there's other people that I'm learning from now. I'm learning how to operate in this situation because I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like I saw some of the posts where you were like really angry and all that. And I was like, I'm feeling the same way, man. I'm feeling the same way. I'm like, okay, it's not just me, you know?
No, it's not just you. And that's why I do it. Because I know that there are like-minded people out there who feel the same way and maybe don't have the platform. And, you know, I know there's a lot of fear. And so some people, a lot of people don't want to speak up because they're fearful and they're afraid of the backlash. And I guess I've now reached the age, honestly. And, you know, I could give a shit about my career in terms of what happens to it. I am at that point. So I actually now feel more emboldened to speak up when I see something that needs to be said. And so some people said, oh, that's so courageous. I don't know. I don't look at it as courage. I just look at it as, no, that's how I feel. And so I'm going to express it. If I'm being given the opportunity to use my skills to get a message across, then I'm going to do it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so thank you for also being vocal, because I think it's important. I really think it's important that people with influence, whether you like it or not, you know, you need to, you know, sometimes express that. And so that.
No, definitely. I think, again, like having you for me, like me for the fans that are going through this as well, the followers are going through this as well, it provides some kind of like, you know, a baseline for them to how they should feel and how they should act. You know, it's really important. I think it's really important if you do have a following that you're able to use that in a way that's constructive.
Yes.
You know, and for me, the biggest thing was like the reason why it took so much time to actually do something was I wanted to find something that was effective.
Yeah.
You know, there were so many things that you could done, but it wouldn't necessarily been effective. Right.
Yep.
And so I felt that the Undefeated platform was great also because it's not just an Asian community, it's sports people.
Right.
And it's about race and culture. So that's what they're used to talking about anyway. And it was an opportunity to also talk to an African-American audience or a white audience about, or Latino audience about what we're going through as well.
Right.
And to share these stories. Because I think that's what's the most important, is that we're all sharing.
Yep.
And that's how we have that, you know, solidarity. That's the only way we're going to get solidarity.
This is the moment where everybody is opening up to this idea, right? So we have to capitalize on this opportunity to be able to educate and inform. And so if we don't, then shame on us for not trying to educate. So thank you for writing that article, because I think it is tremendously effective. And I think it was so beautififally written. Really, Daniel. It really was beautifully written. So, but keep up the great work, and let's keep the communication going, Daniel, because honestly, I think we all need to work together on this in whatever way we can.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Sure. Okay. Well, take care of yourself.
Thank you, Millie.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I have a new best friend. I say that all the time now. I think like Maggie Q's my best friend now, and Kelly Hu is my best friend. Now Daniel Wu is my best friend. So anyway, but that was a lot of fun, and it was great to share with Daniel just about all the things that are going on in this world, and you know, how we are both trying to use our platforms for change, for the good. You know, we all have to stand up for what we believe in, and stand up with some conviction about, you know, the way that the world should be, with more civility and decency, and just love, right? Especially for people like Daniel who has, you know, a small child. You know, I'm sure he wants to create a better world for her, and don't we all? All right. Okay. Well, listen, thank you guys for joining either by video on YouTube on the Mei Li Show channel, or by podcasts on all the major podcast platforms. And hey, listen, spread the word. Please let other people know about the show if they don't know about it already. And let's just, you know, keep this going, and hopefully grow the audience, and hopefully get more information out there that's needed, so that we can elevate our voices and talk about things that are important, and have some fun along the way, because we sure as hell need it right now. Okay. And I want to hear from you as usual. So please write in any way you want. You can email us at themeilishow@gmail.com, or by Instagram, Facebook, all of those good things, Twitter, you know, the usual. Okay. All right. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. And until next time, bye.